Welcome everybody, good afternoon, bonjour et bienvenue à toutes et à tous. Thank you so much for joining us for the second in a series of conversations developed in partnership between ForSpace and the Black Perspectives Office. For today's conversation, BPO's founding coordinator Annick Maugile Flavien is joined by Associate Director of Alumni Relations, Temi Akin-Aina. Hello to you both. In a discussion around the themes that led Temi to her work, the creation of the Black Alumni Network and Council, the importance of Black alumni engagement, and the role alumni play in supporting students and the university. So on behalf of ForSpace, again, we're super happy to have you joining us today, our panelists, and of course, our audience members who are coming in now. Concordia University's ForSpace is located in downtown Jajage on unceded Indigenous land, and we welcome our community of researchers, faculty, staff, and students into the space, in this case virtually, so that we might collaborate on ways to make your research, various initiatives, and course activities publicly accessible. So in light of this, we're very thrilled to have the good fortune of hosting today's conversation. Before I pass it over to Annick, I'll just say that we welcome your engagement throughout the conversation. That's what the chat is there for. Please feel free to leave any reflections or comments throughout. If you have questions for Temi or Annick during a kind of question period, we ask you to simply unmute yourself, raise your virtual hand, and you can speak, or otherwise use the Q&A to pop your question in there. I'll also finally say that after this live event, we will be gently editing this conversation ever so gently and releasing it as a podcast on SoundCloud. Excuse me. So I will put the link to that channel in the chat right now so you can follow up with us there. Okay. On that note, I pass it over to you, Annick. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Anna. I really appreciate that introduction. Welcome, everyone. This is the Black Perspectives Live webinar series, as well as our eventual podcast series in collaboration with ForSpace. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the Black Perspectives Office, ForSpace, and Concordia University are located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Ganyaga Nation is recognized as custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. Jotjage, Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today, it is a home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. And we also take this moment to state that the Black Perspectives Office is informed by and stands in solidarity with Black communities in Canada and across the world who are continuously fighting against anti-Black interpersonal and systemic racism. So now, thank you for being here with us, Temi. I am so excited to have you be the first real guest on this series. I was the last guest, which for me I don't consider myself a guest, and so I'm really so happy to have you here with us to kind of set the tone and vision for the type of conversations we want to be having here, highlighting our amazing Black community members of Concordia, as well as the many relationships we have outside of Concordia, and you are an expert on that in particular. So welcome, Temi.
Thank you. Thank you. Just set the bar really high. Why don't you, Annie? Yeah.
It's because I trust. I have so much faith.
I mean, I hope so. So we'll see. We'll see. Yes. No, I am glad to be here. And I think it's lovely and also just really a nice signpost from the university to have the Black Perspectives Office to, think about how we structure and support all of the different initiatives going on for Black students and pulling in the community. So in case anybody hasn't said it to you, though, I think congratulations on the work you're doing. And I'm also really excited to see what you do. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So Temi, I know about you in the Concordia context. I know about the great work that you do, but this is my opportunity to be as nosy as I want to be and ask you what is your parkour? How did you get here? Tell us a bit about what you studied and all of these things, especially I know that we have a lot of students who like to listen in and they see the end product and they don't know what the many pathways can be. So please tell us a little bit about your life.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, so I think just to start it off, because, I think there are some, Nigerian students at Concordia. So I got to start out by shouting out the fact that I am Nigerian. I'm now first generation Canadian, but, very proudly Nigerian Canadian. I came to Montreal to attend university, the other university down the road, but I also attended Concordia as well. And I studied history. Both places. I love history. I think anybody who has spoken to me or worked with me knows that I'm possibly, I was going to say a little preachy, but I don't actually think I mean preachy, but let's just say I really love context. I will dive into, the relationships, the history, why things are the way they are. And I think that has helped me in my role, I know we have some students here, so I don't know if they're aware of what alumni relations really is, but once you graduate from Concordia, you become alumni. And how I got into this job was, as I was studying in history at McGill and then again at Concordia, I was thinking, my parents they both started out as professors in universities, and education is really important to kind of our family story. So I really wanted to work in supporting education and advancing education. And as I graduated, I started looking around for ways in which I could still remain involved with education. And that led me to Alumni Relations. Alumni Relations basically is, we're a department of the university. The grander department is called University Advancement. And the whole point of our job is to mobilize alumni in support of Concordia for a lifetime. So we do that by getting in there, connecting with colleagues on campus, figuring out if there are gaps where we can support students, figuring out what is relevant to alumni, planning events on events on events, celebrating our donors, celebrating our alumni, and also ultimately fundraising for support so that Concordia can be greater than the sum of its parts, right? So I graduated and I was like, this is what I want to do. And I was lucky enough to start out at McGill. And to start out basically, kind of on the ground floor, working with students and young alumni. And then I worked in pretty much most of the, departments around alumni relations, thinking about, the communities that we engage and work with and how we build those up and the strategy about what we do and who we do it with and why we do it. And after I, learned as much as I could, the opportunity arose for me to come to Concordia. And you have no idea how lovely it is to be able to say you've worked at both your alma maters. I don't think very many people get to do that. So it is, I'm very excited to do the work that I do, and I'm happy to be able to continue doing it. And I mean, this is a little obvious, but there's some members of my team are probably on the webinar. So I do want to shout out the best alumni relations shop in the country. So yeah. I'll say it.
That's amazing. I love how what doesn't necessarily seem as like the streamline, like, oh, you study history so that you end up being the associate director in alumni relations. But in a lot of ways, I think that you're holding space for both of your interests. One of the things that I love about the way that you do your work is that you really do not only build on the history and legacy of Concordia, but also find ways to honor the many, many people who passed through here, right? So there's so much that I end up knowing about Concordia's history just by, the way that you engage with the alumni and make their participation be a bit of a living history rather than, say, an archived history. Yeah, that's amazing. It's been about 5 years that you're here at Concordia, right? In those 5 years, what are some of the changes that you've seen in alumni relations and kind of the direction that it's taking and how you've been able to continue to shape that?
So I think that the first piece and that I would like to highlight is, moving from McGill to Concordia was interesting for me because I was excited about the possibility, but I was also really excited just about the on-campus experience here. So the partnerships that we've been able to build, going to our colleagues at CMS with like Meiji, going to colleagues across campus and saying, either what are your gaps or, who are your interesting alumni, who can we bring in to speak, who can we bring back on campus? So thinking about those connections, I think that is one of the interesting pieces about alumni relations kind of generally really moving forward and amplifying alumni voices. But the other thing that I would like to say for right now in the moment in which we're in is that while COVID has been crazy, but it has also really given us this space to connect community in a way that we hadn't necessarily, had the access to before. So we, very early on, we were lucky enough to be able, we had already been doing some work, in the virtual space, but we were able to pivot very quickly and just really highlight alumni and highlight diverse alumni. So, from some of our amazing, like nationally recognized jazz singers, we got some of our grads to do sessions for families and sessions for the community, to our researchers, to just, the people that make Concordia what it is, the people who are reflective of, the entire university experience, as you said, who have different stories to tell. And I think that because of, the opportunity we've had to highlight so many stories, that more students, more recent alumni can see themselves in people's stories. We hope that we have given them a chance to, understand, as you said, more paths, but also give them a chance to connect with each other. And because of the virtual programming, they've found our workshops more accessible. So it has been this really nice place to see, yes, we've done a lot of work, but also more alumni than ever, and students even, have been able to see our work, learn more about each other, learn more about the communities that exist, and actually gain useful information and insight.
Yeah, for sure. I think, one of the things I've seen from your office is really quite innovative and progressive ways of thinking through alumni relationships, whether that be CU Connect or the many other ways that you engage with, the types of networking events that you do and all that. Can you tell us a little bit more about the services you offer and kind of unpack some of that for us?
Yes, no, I do appreciate that. So the way in which we work in alumni relations here at Concordia, there's a couple of pieces to it. I mentioned early on that we work with students and young alumni, and the idea there is to work with our colleagues on campus to A, support students and student leaders, and B, also really help with pathways to bring alumni back to campus. So whether that's virtually or, or in person prior to COVID, but really to facilitate these opportunities to showcase how alumni lives have gone after graduation, so that others can learn from it. So that's what we do with students and young alumni. You also mentioned CU Connect. So one of the programs that we're really proud of and that we've worked very hard on as a unit is our alumni career services. So when I arrived at Concordia, it was a year after we had done a huge omnibus survey, which basically we sent out a survey to all of our alumni and said, what do you guys want from us? And what they said was they want career services and they want networks. They wanted to broaden their networks. So for us, that was essentially our marching orders to think about, what communities do we engage? How do we give alumni the relevant information that they were wanting from us? So that gave us the impetus to build out alumni career services, where we host a number of webinars about professional development skills. We partner with colleagues on campus like, continuing education. We bring in researchers, we highlight alumni speakers to really help you level up in your career at different levels. And part of our career services is CU Connect. And CU Connect is our mentor program, which allows our alumni mentors to engage with students and young alumni. So if you want to mentor, check out CU Connect. If you would like to mentor, please check out CU Connect. And you see, my team is on it. So Olivia has posted the link in the chat. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And so that's CU Connect really allows for, as I said, students and alumni to connect to review, whether it's review your LinkedIn, to review your CV, to discuss your past, to get the right kind of expertise that'll be able to move you forward. And this for us, you mentioned relationships. it's important to be able to build authentic relationships with each other. So students with alumni, alumni with students, alumni with the university. And that's really, our business is helping build these relationships. So we're really always trying to think through, how do we allow people a chance to engage with the university in a way that makes sense for them, and also hopefully moves the university forward. So with students, with fundraising, with volunteering. And volunteering is a third aspect that I'm just going to shout out. Concordia has a really strong volunteer tradition. So we have the Concordia University Alumni Association, which is basically a body of our volunteers who represent the voice of our 220,000 plus alumni. And so what they do is they just provide us with guidance and advice. They, think about, they reflect back what they're hearing from fellow alumni about what is important to the university, or what is important to them, and how the university can help support them. So we support our alumni groups, very intently, and we're always happy to hear what people are saying about whether it was their time at Concordia or how they want to be involved with Concordia today. So those are all pieces that we're kind of thinking through. And just as another aside, I mentioned communities earlier, and I think you're probably going to get to that. So I don't want to necessarily preempt you.
No, definitely, very much so. And I think that it also speaks to what you were mentioning around building relationships between alumni and the university. And I think that, when we're speaking about marginalized communities in general, right, who navigates society as well as the institution with their own experiences and load that can be. And so to think about how we re-engage them is really important. And, you are the mastermind behind our Black Alumni Network and Council. Can you tell us a little bit about how this started, where this came from for you, and what type of work are you all doing right now?
Yeah, so our Black Alumni Network and Council kind of comes out of a tradition of us, as I said, thinking about, what are our priority audiences, and what are the audiences we want to engage. So prior to Black Alumni, we actually started with Women in Leadership. With my senior director and I, just at that point, Hillary Clinton had just lost, and we were thinking about the importance of women mobilizing. And it was, we just started reaching out, and every time we reached out and we said, we think it's important that women are able to, discuss matters of interest to them in that professional space and sphere. And every time we did that, people said, yeah, I'm super interested, let's do this. And that kind of set the framework. So every time we want to engage a community, we try not to approach it from kind of an artificial leadership place. So what we do first is we, either we gauge the interest in creating a new alumni community, and then we also look for champions and volunteers. So I will admit that there was a little bit of a push from our colleagues down the road, our sister universities down the road around the Black Alumni Network, because McGill started a Black Alumni Association. And when they did, every time there would be a Black Alumni event, I would get phone calls and text messages saying, there was a Black Alumni event, and all I saw were Concordia people, and where's ours, So it was lovely in terms of knowing that there was this Black alumni community that is here, that is proud to be Concordia grads, that were, vocal about letting us know what was going on. And each time I got those text messages, I said, okay, well, I need volunteers. This isn't going to be AstroTurf, so people need to reach out. And a couple of years ago, we had a number of alumni say, okay, we're going to help you form the council. We're ready to be here. We're ready to put some work in. And that was what we had been wanting. And so essentially 2 years ago, you were there. We held our very first Black alumni reunion at homecoming. And it was in person. But what was amazing for us is we sent out the email as part of our homecoming advertising, and it sold out right away. We had our journalists, our alumni journalists reach out right away saying, why is Concordia doing this? This is such a great idea. Do you want to talk to us about this on the radio? So it was just this, there's something to be said for knowing that something is likely to be resonant. There's also something to be said for seeing it in action. So the fact that we were able to put this event up, that so many people registered right away, and then they attended, and this was one of our most highly attended homecoming events. What was also really nice, and which is why Concordia, can be just such a special place, was the president showed up, our VP showed up. They all came down, to see how the reunion was going, to say hello to people, to thank them for being there, because that's what homecoming is. I've jokingly often said, to friends and colleagues that homecoming is our Super Bowl. We welcome thousands of alumni back on campus, now more virtually, right? But thousands of alumni come back to campus to either reconnect with people, so reconnect with friends, with faculty, to support students, to sometimes to bring their own kids as prospective students, right? And we track first-time alumni attendees. And that Black Alumni reunion had a ridiculously high percentage of first-time alumni attendees. So it showed that
included.
you work here and you're like, this is the first time I'm going to come to something.
Working here for 12 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for me, and when we look at our women in leadership, we look at Black alumni, we look at the programming we do around LGBTQ at homecoming. It's really important that we do try to be, diversity is part of our story. Like we have a diverse audience and community, but trying to be inclusive, and that's where some of that community engagement comes through, right? We know that based on these events that Black alumni do want to engage on identity. So how can we provide relevant programming? How can we support the next generation of Black students? And I think, I probably shouldn't be trying to interview you on your podcast, but you and I had a talk a couple of weeks ago about the importance of support, for the BPO, and the importance of community support in showcasing, the viability of the BPO and supporting Black causes on campus. So I would look to you to talk a little bit about that as well in terms of the mobilization of this community.
Well, actually, like on a personal level, I remember when I went to the event, the thing that struck me the most is that how intergenerational it was, so from like, there were like many young faces that I'm fairly used to seeing because I know the students quite well. And then there were like, and people were walking around with their tag that said when they graduated, and it was really, really beautiful. And I think that particularly for the Black community, like those intergenerational relationships are so important, and we don't always have meaningful context to have them, right? So, you can invite, say, your mom or your whatever to an event, but is it something that you are all kind of mutually invested in and actually have your own perspectives to bring to the table? And so that was one thing that I really love. And I think that kind of extends to what you're talking about in terms of community support for BPO, is that I really, in the work that we do, I want to think ahead, and I want to think, be able to recollect in the past in a way that's not only just honoring our past history and as like Black Concordians, but also in realizing that many of our past Black Concordians are still here and have so much to offer to our students, to our understanding of the structure, to the way that we kind of want to move forward. Much of the way that I do the work I do is a bit intuitive, because I graduated from here 3 times, and there's a bit of sense of like, oh, actually, I remember this, I remember that. And every time that we engage with different alumni, we get that wealth of knowledge. It's really quite exciting. And yeah, I'm just so happy that you are doing that work, and that it's becoming also, I think that there's something to be said about naming, so to have a Black Alumni Network and to name it as such, I think also invokes a sense of pride and legacy. And I think that, whether that be Concordia University or Canadian institutions at large, I think that there's a sense that Black knowledge is new, and it is not. Black Canadians have been here for many, many, many generations, and even the international relationships with Canadian institutions. So it's really quite exciting to have that level of pride be brought forward as well. I also want to mention to everyone who's listening that Temi is also wears many hats at Concordia. One of her many hats is the subcommittee lead for the President's Task Force on Anti-Black Racism, subcommittee lead for fundraising and community engagement. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the work that's your subcommittee will be embarking on and kind of the vision you have for that.
Thank you, Annick. So I'm very excited to be part of the task force, in particular in this subcommittee that is tied towards philanthropy and fundraising and community engagement, because as you said, it does tie into both those pieces, the alumni network, and also really just being clear about the need for support and the need for philanthropic dollars to support our values. So I'm excited that Concordia is thinking about this in this way. I think it is something that's innovative. The subcommittee that I'm on is focusing essentially on kind of community engagement, like how do we provide internships, industry opportunities, experiential learning opportunities for Black students, obviously, more generally but also for other students, thinking about how we really embed within our alumni networks, within our community networks, this tradition of coming back to Concordia with these experiential opportunities. We know that work opportunities are what allow students to get ahead, allow alumni to sometimes get their first jobs. And we also know that, being in the alumni office, we always talk about the importance of the alumni network. So this for us, hopefully will be an opportunity to really make that concrete, to ask our alumni wherever they are to be able to reach out with actual professional development opportunities for students to learn and to be able to get into the workforce. And then the other piece is thinking around the fundraising strategies and the philanthropic strategies for supporting the work of the task force. What does that look like? It looks like trying to figure out who our donors will be, trying to make sure that we have enough institutional opportunities, institutional buckets on campus for people to be able to give to the kinds of, whether they're scholarships, whether they're bursary programs, whether they're fellowships for, students working in this space. And also really just drilling down into what supporting some of this does for us from, an advancement point of view as well. I've been able to tell a story of kind of the Concordia community and, the different networks that are a part of the Concordia community, and that we, raise funds for that proudly, because that's a part of the university's priorities. So I think that was it in a nutshell, because we're just beginning to work, obviously.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah.
That's amazing. And I think that it touches on something that you had told me a few months ago that really stuck with me. I'm miswording it, so I'm going to let you re-say it. But it was essentially that alumni is our biggest population at Concordia. So something, I'm sorry, you say it better. Tell me more.
That's okay. And it's something that I've stolen from my boss, because she says it all the time. But alumni generally are the largest stakeholder constituency at the university. So at Concordia, we're happy to say that we have over 220,000 alumni, right? So just think about that. When we started the conversation, I said, my job is essentially mobilizing alumni in support of Concordia for a lifetime. So if we could get, percentages of those, right? People who love Concordia, they want their kids to come to Concordia, or, students who are having an interesting time working, being at Concordia, studying, working, making connections for a lifetime. And also, we support those we support causes we care about. So that means showing up, attending events, volunteering, mentoring, and also ultimately giving to make Concordia a better institution as we move forward. So yeah.
I love that. And I think that, we often forget that it's funny because, when we have our CVs and we have our, and we present ourselves, that we are participating in the continuous knowledge production and understanding of what Concordia is. And I think that that's a big part of being alumni, whether or not you actually on top of that get to do the volunteering and the donating and the engagement and all of that. And it's so important to be able to feel like you belong in all of that, and that your story is being held at the same time as you continue to represent this institution. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you see the role of alumni to continue to change, particularly with this year that's been a really kind of game changer in terms of our understanding of um, what supports we actually need from each other, and kind of how that's shifting your framework.
Yeah, so I appreciate the question because, something I hadn't mentioned, but I think is really key to thinking about this is I have been super lucky. I don't know if the students will say that, but I've been super lucky this year to work with, I'm just gonna, for lack of a better framework, call them our Black student champions. So last year, a number of students wrote me saying, we would like to set up a Black students career development event. And since, they heard about me, I guess, through the Black Alumni Network, they said, can you guys, can the Black Alumni Network, the Black Alumni Council, can you sponsor it? And so just actually last weekend, we held our second iteration of this event, which I know you know. But the idea behind this was that, at Concordia currently, there isn't a targeted career development event for Black students. And what these student leaders wanted to do was to give their peers a chance to learn about, services on campus like yours, the BPO, but also like CAPS and CMS, where sometimes students don't go, maybe they don't know about it, maybe they're intimidated, even though they shouldn't be, but you don't know what you don't know. So the idea is to bring these students' services bring them virtually to this event and showcase what is available on campus. And then the other piece about it was to, reach out to alumni speakers, panelists, bring in Black professionals to help with them with networking, and also obviously help them in terms of, creating the networks necessary to be able to find jobs. And in both of these events, it was a little bit like, what we experience with Women in Leadership. Every time you write somebody and say, hey, would you like to be a part of this? People are like, yep, I would love to be a part of this. I really want to do this. Let me know what's going on and I'll be there. So, we did see it in university advancement in my department when we created the Emergency Student Fund. The Concordia community has been so supportive of trying to, make sure that Concordia students have the help they need. So in everything we've kind of asked for this year, people have been like, yep, count me in. And, but especially around, specific networks and specific communities, I think we're going to see more of that, because the pandemic has flattened the barriers to access. It is easier for us, to get really interesting speakers. It's been really nice for us we were, out quickly with Zoom, but whether it's from breakout rooms to just, as I said, these interesting panelists, just those two events really showcased kind of the power of community and being able to, work together. And it was driven by students, which I just think is really fantastic and showcases, kind of the proactiveness that we have in our student community. Even though I'm just going to say, you guys register and then you don't show up. So please just show up when you register for events. It makes us all feel much better about our lives. So.
Well, we have a common intern, Temi and I, and she came out of the event being like, wow, like, first of all, I think that I just saw, even in that day, the leap in her own professional development of just really being like, I visioned this thing with my colleagues, which were largely students of the same, age group. We had a vision, we made it come true. We were able to kind of react in moments of like, the tensity of like, oh, the event's happening, how do we deal with this? And, reacting to that. And then also the come out of that of being like, wow, I'm really proud of what we did. It was well attended. There was like, I can't remember what she was telling me the numbers, but it was just like so exciting to see that in one student. And so let alone, all the different members that were participating in that. And then also my own, story of working with university advancement for the Concordia Shuffle and being like, okay, let's propose this thing of raising money for Black student mental health. And within a week, raising $20,000 is just phenomenal, right? And so just really, I love that how you're saying it, like really allowing, I think it actually creates more entry points when we have, we acknowledge the need for some targeted relationships, and that there are reasons why our community would want to engage with specific communities and how they relate to that. It's really quite exciting.
Yeah, and the piece about it too is that this stuff radiates outwards, right? So perhaps your entry point is a Black student event, but you end up doing lots of other things, right? It's never just, especially if you are a Concordia grad, like you came here, you had classes with all sorts of people. But sometimes if what you would like to do at this moment is make sure that, say, for example, Black students can get into Microsoft, like I'm happy, that works for me, because then we're going to have successful alumni who can hopefully kind of pay it forward, moving forward. And I will say that in terms of our programming, we do think about strategy. We think about, as I said, building communities generally. So we're always doing that work. So whether it's a Black student, it's any other student, or alumni, it's really important to us that we have meaningful opportunities for people to be able to connect with Concordia, feel proud about the association, and then also, do some of the things that we know are going to be important for students, are going to be important for our colleagues on campus, and also ultimately will be important for the university. And just to go back to your question, I know that you'd said, what are some of the pieces that you're kind of either excited about or, thinking strategically about moving forward from the alumni side. I want to highlight the importance of the work that your office has done, and also the importance of working with, the Office of Community Engagement. So hopefully being able to really just kind of build on the themes that you guys are already working on and thinking about. So, about Black mental health and wellness. Like we know that this is already an identified theme. So can we find alumni to amplify that? Can we share alumni speakers with you? Can we highlight what you're doing? With the Office of Community Engagement, there's an emphasis there on social innovation, on community impact. Concordia also has that in its DNA. So again, highlighting that, amplifying that. And then, for us, our businesses, relationships, it's amplifying alumni voices. So trying to make sure that we're diverse and inclusive in what we do, whether it's with our topics and with our speakers, and building that in all around. That's what I'm excited about. I think, that's what we're going to keep on trying to work on and build up.
That's great. We're going to go open up to questions in a few seconds, but I want to kind of end this with two things. What is the thing that you love the most about your job? And then also, what is the thing that is the most challenging and that you could use more support in, whether that be from the larger community or the Concordia community?
Those are heavy closing questions, huh? That's very large. I feel like I missed that in the briefing doc. No, I could. What do I love most about my job? Honestly, the people. I think that I will say I'm introverted, extroverted. So, I'm not totally a kind of go out there all the time and, smile with the people. But I do love meeting people. I love hearing alumni stories. I like amplifying alumni stories. I like being able to work with my colleagues on campus. So just that piece of learning, both the good stories. And I think this actually leads me very easily into the challenging piece, is that, even it does seem like there's still a lot of gaps, right? Just the scale of the things we can do, whether it's with alumni or with supporting campus partners. That's a piece that is always very interesting to try to, figure out. So we're always just trying to share alumni names. So if you know of anybody who is a Concordia grad that we should be aware of, you can always send that information over to, the alumni office. You can always send us an email about that, attend our event. What's the best email to reach out to us? I'm going to ask Alana to pop the alumni email in the chat, please.
Have a whole crew with you. It'll be in the chat box. Great.
Yeah. But I'm pretty certain it's just alumni@concordia.ca.
Oh, you're so look, it is that one.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And also, I think we're we're really trying to build up not trying to, I think we have a really great alumni community. But I would like to invite all Concordia alumni to feel that they have a place hanging out with us, working with us, volunteering, mentoring. So we do hope that alumni feel invested in the university, or if not, we can work on that relationship. But at the very least, that they can let us know about their successes, so that we can share them, with the rest of the alumni and student community.
Yes, very much so. Thank you. I'm so glad. And if there's any alumni listening right now, please get in contact with Temi, and also keep listening to the series, because there's going to be many members, like entry points for how to connect with Concordia, and the larger knowledge that's around us. So we're going to open up the chat. There's been a lot of messages in the chats, but there are not any questions. So if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask Temi, you can always raise your hand as well, to ask a question and unmute yourself so we can hear you. Yeah. Is there anything that you all are working on event-wise, Temi, that you would like to promote while we're waiting for some questions? Oh, you're muted.
Well, this actually, there is I think a question just came up in the chat. But in terms of events, we have events weekly for Concordia alumni, but students are obviously always able to attend those. So that link is in the chat there. So I would always ask people to keep abreast of our events. We really do try to build in either campus partners, or, as I said, really just alumni experts. So I would suggest that people stay abreast of that link from us.
Awesome. So there's a question in the chat that says, what does long-term success look like for the Black Perspectives Office? I will also answer this question, but I'd love to hear what you think that means.
Yeah, I will say this does sound possibly like a little bit of a cop-out, but I am intrigued to hear what you have to say. But for me, I think that, part of the Black Perspectives Office being able to really showcase the value of, the different Black student organizations, the Black community at Concordia, will be really useful in moving forward, because I think even whether it's with regards to things, I know that there have been questions around like a Black Studies program, some of these pieces, as well as making, the history of Black students, Black organizations on campus a little bit more visible. I think these are pieces that we here in the alumni office, so I went to an event in Toronto with our we have a 50 under 50 program, and I met this alumni in Toronto, and he was talking about the heydays of the Caribbean Student Union at Concordia, when people would travel from all over America to come to Concordia for Caribbean Student Union programming. And I was at Concordia in the early 2000s, and I had no clue about this. And he was like, oh, you were 2 years too late or something. But it was just this delightful conversation, and these our Caribbean alumni are hosting their reunions in California and just little pockets of the world, and I think that, having a Black Perspectives office means that we can, resurface some of those stories and have that also be a little bit of, an anchor for current students in terms of whether it's the imagination of what you can do with your community, of, amplifying other student voices, building up the community. I think those are very cool things that the Black Perspectives Office will hopefully be able to, be a clearinghouse for students to be able to make those connections.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more. Was I along the same lines of you, or?
I love it. I'm taking it from my brain bank, so I can be like, okay, we need to work on this. It's really helpful. Thank you. For myself, I would say, it's actually funny as we enter Black History Month, which is such an interesting month for our community. And I think that one of the things that kind of ends up happening is that people stay focused on the word history and really want to either, put us in an archive, or maybe just look at the archive and don't think of us as real living, beings who are continuously thinking about our past, present, and future at the same time in a lot of ways. And that's what I really want to be doing in terms of long-term vision of the Black Perspectives Office, is really, you know, like you're saying about like the Caribbean Student Union, and how do we find ways for the Black Concordian legacy to not only be honored, but to be, you know, weaved into the fiber in a way that really continues it on, and that we're not looking at something like, oh, well, if this person's not here to carry it, the load falls, but really that there's like an ample network that can be sustained by many different parties. And yeah, you know, I think about when I was younger, I mentioned this in the first episode of the BPO. When I was younger, I dreamed about going to an HBCU so badly. And it's not just about the people, right? I mean, that is a very clear part about it, but there is something about knowing that the structure hold space for the identity to continue, and that's to inform itself on a continuous basis. And I think that that's kind of what I imagine for the BPO, is that we create a structure that would really allow for the many the huge diversity of Black voices to continuously build upon itself, right? And to not have one be in favor of another, or to have this idea of like scarcity or a lack of resources or anything of the sort, but rather that it's a continuous wealth that's happening. And this is why, you know, having you here is like, for me, an expansion of that dream, because what's happening in university advancement is it informs our daily, right? Whether or not we're actually working together on a project, it actually informs the way that we can actually continue to live on within this institution, but also with the larger community. Is there any other questions in the chat room? Or you can feel free to unmute yourselves and say what you have to say. I think we're good. I think it is a Friday afternoon at 3:47 and people are, oh, we have another one. I know it's the early days, but do you have any fundraising goals for BPO? Well, I'm going to be working with Temi to be making some fundraising goals, definitely. As was mentioned earlier, Temi is on the President's Task Force for Anti-Black Racism and is leading our kind of thinking through fundraising. As for the BPO, there are many fundraising roles, but I don't know if I can name them at this moment, just because they're kind of in the structure of being created. And when I name a fundraising goal, I really want to have an entry point for people to be able to actually do that fundraising with us. But I will say that there's many levels of support that are needed, right? So there's support needed in the sense of services for students, which is kind of like our, the main pull that we do, like whether that be scholarships, project funding, mentorship program, like all of that we really dedicate our energy towards our students. And then there's also thinking about Black knowledge within the university. And so if we were to push towards what would eventually look like a Black Studies program, or just even in terms of thinking about what Black Studies looks like across all departments, and finding interdisciplinary ways of bringing in fellows and all of that. So there's a whole level of funds that happens on that level. And I think I'm less than fundraising. I'm much more interested in thinking about who are the people who want to invest in what Black scholarship and Black perspectives are at Concordia. And that doesn't always translate to money, although some money is very, very much appreciated. And I think that's, yeah, if and ever there's anyone who's listening and they're like, I want to be part of that, you know, the stakeholders, as Temi so beautifully says, who are contributing to that, then that would be, it'd be really helpful. And you can always contact me at bpo@concordia.ca. I think we're gonna wrap up. Is there any final words that you would like to make known by everyone, Temi?
Sure. I think the piece that I do just always want to stress is the importance of alumni to the university community, right? Alumni really exist as supporters of students, as champions of the university, and ultimately also, really bringing in kind of that fundraising and volunteering piece. So I hope I hope that our conversation has, given those, especially the students listening to the webinar, a little bit more information about this. Also, in terms of the people who work at the Alumni Relations office, we are all really nice. So if you see an event, please feel free to, sign up for our events. Tell your friends if you're doing interesting stuff on campus. There's probably a way in which it can intersect with the work we do. So, we salute all our students, and especially our student leaders who are invested on campus. And, we look forward to, we're going to call you alumni. Like once you graduate, you are alumni. So you don't really have, you don't really have a say in whether we call you alumni or not. But we're always really excited to see our students go on to do great things and to become, a part of our alumni community. So we're excited for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Temi. And really opening our eyes for the possibilities. That number is still ringing in my head, 220,000. I'm like, ooh, if we had just one out of 10 to come and join us, that would be so wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass the ball to Anna. That's going to wrap us up.
Thank you so much, Temi and Annick, for your important insights today, your really generous and engaged conversation, and more generally, your time and your energy that you have shared with us today and in preparation for this conversation. So this was the second episode in the Black Perspectives Live at Concordia podcast, presented in collaboration with Fourth Space. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time for the next conversation on February 12th. A reminder that this conversation will be released as a podcast on the CU Fourth Space SoundCloud. So on that note, I wish you a very good weekend, and we'll see everybody in February. Thanks a lot. Bye.